Hi everyone, welcome to Parapsychology Foundation's 2019 Holiday Book Expo. This is the second one, and you can see I'm all decked out, as in deck the halls, and I've got a box full of just about half a year's worth of new acquisitions for the Eileen J. Garrett Library. So we're going to take a look and see what Santa has brought me, and hopefully you. So let's see. By the way, my name is Lisette Coley. I'm the president of Parapsychology Foundation, and I'm filming at my home, and I have two cats, and they are probably very curious. So if they pop into the frame, we'll just say happy holidays to them too. Okay? So let's see what we've got in the box. Well, at the top of the list is a magnificent book entitled Seance by Shannon Taggart. We had found at the foundation are very proud of this book. We gave Shannon the 2018 Rogo Award for Parapsychological Media. She's a photographer, artist, and for many years she has gained access to various mediums, physical mediums, and with her beautiful pictures has been allowed to chronicle and capture many stunning photographs, as you can see. But there's a foreword by Dan Aykroyd, our beloved ghost buster, who comes from a long line of spiritualist mediums himself. And there's also Andreas Fisher and Tony Orsler have written essays, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful tome. So I know that its first run is becoming very quickly depleted, so it's available at Amazon. In fact, most of these books are, but I know for a fact, Shannon told me that they're selling out. So if you want to get Seance, better run on over to Amazon. You know, as we go through the box, I want to illustrate the breadth of our subject matter, because people who are interested in psychical phenomena come to us from very many disciplines and in different directions. So you'll see quite a panoply of topics that are going to be discussed today. So let's see here. This is The Shape of the Soul, What Mystical Experience Tells Us About Ourselves and Reality by Paul Marshall. And apparently, when Paul Marshall began to pay attention to his dreams, he could not have anticipated the transformative experience that would follow. A tremendous expansion of consciousness exposed the insignificance of his everyday self, but also revealed unsuspected depths of mind and hinted at a deeper self that holds the universe within. In The Shape of the Soul, Marshall, now a mysticism scholar, draws on personal experiences along with a wealth of religious, philosophical, and scientific ideas to explore this deeper self. Drawing inspiration from the philosophers Plotinus and Leibniz, Marshall takes mind to be more fundamental than matter, and views the basic units of nature as perceptual beings. We ourselves are such beings, striving for fulfillment in a long evolutionary journey of soul-making. Addressing the mind-body problem, the origin of the universe, evolution, reincarnation, suffering, and the nature of God, Marshall delivers what will surely prove an intellectual classic. Now, Mr. Marshall is an independent researcher with interests in mysticism, religion, philosophy, science, and their interactions. And he studied natural sciences at the University of Cambridge and received his MA and PhD in religious studies from Lancaster University. So somebody who's very dear to the foundation, Edward Kelly, writes of this book, "We desperately need an enlarged conception of nature that can overcome the contemporary alienation between science and spirituality." In this beautifully written book, Paul Marshall addresses that need by bringing to bear both an uncommon knowledge of the world's religious and mystical traditions and a deep understanding of relevant developments in modern physics. An outstanding contribution. And I suspect that, oh yes, Comey is also interested in this particular volume as well. I did warn you about the cats. Let's see now. Okay. Next up is Coincidences, The Source and Significance of Coincidences by Sharon, Hewitt, Rowlett. Apparently, this is going to illustrate mind-bending evidence that will challenge skeptics and believers alike. Apparently, every now and then, we all have experiences that seem too meaningful to be chance, but that we can't explain in any normal way. Now, philosopher Sharon Hewitt Rowlett tackles some of the hardest questions surrounding such coincidences, such as, how can we tell whether a coincidence is too improbable to be just chance? Is there any hard evidence that coincidences convey genuine messages from God or our deceased loved ones? Do ordinary people have the psychic ability to create coincidences for themselves or others? And why do coincidences sometimes harm or deceive? Rowlett brings together an immense body of research and personal experience that clearly points to a meaningful reality beyond the bounds of current science, and at the same time demonstrates both the promise and peril of interpreting coincidences as signs from above. Rigorously paradigm-shattering, this volume will leave skeptics and believers alike ruminating for years to come. Sharon apparently has a PhD in philosophy from New York University, wrote her dissertation at the École Normale Supérieure in Paris, and her essays have appeared in Salon and Orion and the Journal of Scientific Exploration. So this is particularly interesting. Coincidences. The Emergence of Global Consciousness Connected, by a good friend to the PF, Roger D. Nelson. Roger Nelson runs the Global Consciousness Project, GCP, an international collaboration studying mass consciousness. He conducted psi research at the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research, known as the PAIR Laboratory, from 1980 to 2002, and while at Princeton created the GCP in 1997. Interests in psychology, physics, philosophy, and the arts facilitate his research at the edges of what we know. His focus is the subtle interconnections that define an emerging humanity. Now, Dean Radin, who's well known in the field, of course, and is a best-selling author, says of the book, "Is there an Earth mind? This is the story of the Global Consciousness Project, a unique 20-year scientific collaboration of researchers recording the effects of mass consciousness in response to major global events. Its findings are consistent with the wisdom traditions of many cultures and speak of humanity's unity and deep connections through love, compassion, and the creative impulse. What if there were an instrument designed to probe the properties of human coherence? There is." Dean Radin says it's called the Global Consciousness Project, and this is its remarkable story. I'm personally very proud to have one of the so-called nests, one of the eggs of the global consciousness that is ticking along next to my desk for many years, emitting its information back to the Global Consciousness Project. So I'm really anxious to get into this one, and I suggest you should too. Well, we have The Paranormal Surrounds Us, Psychic Phenomena in Literature, Culture, and Psychoanalysis by Richard Reichbart, with a foreword by Nikita Brockman and an afterword by Michael Prescott. Well, the author, Richard Reichbart, is a clinical psychologist and psychoanalyst, and he's held positions, past president of the Institute for Psychoanalytic Training and Research in New York, various other associations, and he's a member of the Parapsychological Association. So let's see what they say about this particular book. From the back, obviously, Shakespeare, Tolstoy, Joyce, E.M. Foster, and Ingmar Bergman all made the paranormal essential to their depiction of humanity. Freud recognized telepathy as an everyday phenomenon. Observations on parapsychological aspects of psychoanalysis also include the findings of the mesmerists, Jung, Ferenczi, and Eisenbach. Many academicians attribute such psychic discoveries to poetic license, rather than to accurate understanding of our parapsychological capacities. The author, a practicing psychoanalyst and parapsychologist, and a lawyer familiar with Navajo culture, argues for a fresh appraisal of psi phenomena and their integration into psychoanalytic theory and clinical work, literary studies, and anthropology. So, the paranormal surrounds it. Well, I think we agree it certainly does. Oh, wow. Physics and psychics, the occult and the sciences in modern Britain. This is by Richard Noakes, taken from the Flyleaf. This is the first systematic exploration of the intriguing connections between Victorian physical sciences and the study of the controversial phenomena broadly classified as psychic, occult, and paranormal. These phenomena included animal magnetism, spirit rapping, telekinesis, and telepathy. Richard Noakes shows that psychic phenomena interested far more Victorian scientists than we have previously assumed, challenging the view of these scientists as individuals clinging rigidly to a materialistic worldview. Physicists, chemists, and other physical scientists studied psychic phenomena for a host of scientific, philosophical, religious, and emotional reasons, and many saw such investigations as exciting new extensions to their theoretical and experimental researches. While these attempted extensions were largely unsuccessful, they laid the foundations of modern-day explorations of the connections between physics and psychic phenomena. This revelatory study challenges our view of the history of physics and deepens our understanding of the relationships between science and the occult, and science and religion. Bernard Carr, a good colleague, past president of the Society for Psychical Research and a professor of mathematics and astronomy at Queen Mary University of London, has written that this book, quote, provides new and fascinating insights into the historical links between physics and psychical research. It shows that the interest of eminent physicists in the subject was initially surprisingly widespread, and that this was important in gaining its scientific recognition. Recent developments in physics have rekindled an interest in the link with psychical research, which makes this work particularly timely. So, let's dive into physics and psychics. Oh my goodness. Well, what is this? Credulity, A Cultural History of U.S. Mesmerism. And this is by Emily Ogden. Apparently, from the 1830s to the Civil War, Americans could be found putting each other into trances in parlors, on stage, and in medical offices. They were performing mesmerism. Surprisingly central to antebellum life, mesmerism embraced a variety of phenomena, including mind control and clairvoyance. In the first comprehensive American history of mesmerism in 30 years, Emily Ogden connects this occult science to broad issues of faith, skepticism, and gullibility. That's a mouthful, gullibility. Imported from the French Antilles to eastern textile factory cities, mesmerism was soon practiced throughout the U.S. It attracted attention from canonical figures such as Emerson and Melville, and ignited newspaper flame wars. The practice was not simply magic's last gasp. Far from being magicians themselves, mesmerists provided a rational means of manipulating the credulous tendencies that had driven past superstitions. Mesmerists made these tendencies subserve such modern ends as labor supervision, education, and mediated communication. Neither a throwback nor a radical alternative, mesmerism was part and parcel of the modern. Credulity, this book, offers a new way of understanding enchantment's place in secularizing America. That's an interesting concept. I think we have to dive into that. I don't know too much about U.S. mesmerism, so I guess I'm going to learn. Oh my God, this is a heavy book. Okay, now this is volume 3, both of Volume 3, Psychokinesis, the Stargate Archives. And I must note that both Volumes 1 and 2 are already on the shelves of the Garrett Library. Here's number 3, Reports of the United States Government-Sponsored Psi Program from 1972 to 1995, compiled and edited by Edward C. May and Sonali Marwaha. So, there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of curiosity about the Stargate program. Stargate is the largest funded program in the history of psi research, receiving about $19.9 million in funding from 1972 to 1995. Researchers from SRI International and later at Science Applications International Corporation, in association with various U.S. intelligence agencies, participated in this program. Using the remote viewing method, research focused on understanding the applicability and nature of psi in general, but mostly upon informational psi. Volume 1, that I mentioned we already have, Remote Viewing, 72 to 84, and Volume 2, Remote Viewing, 85 to 95, include all aspects of RV, Remote Viewing, including laboratory trials and several operational results. Volume 3, Psychokinesis, focuses on laboratory investigations. Volume 4, Operational Remote Viewing, which I don't have and I would love to get my hands on, Government Memorandums and Reports, includes an analysis of the applied remote viewing program and a selection of documents that provide a narrative on the behind-the-scenes activities of Stargate. In a total of 504 separate missions from 1972 to 1995, remote viewing produced actionable intelligence, prompting 89% of the customers to return with additional missions. The Stargate data indicate that informational psi is a valid phenomenon. These data have led to the development of a physics and neuroscience-based testable model for the underlying mechanism, which considers informational psi as a normal, albeit atypical phenomenon. The Stargate data found insufficient evidence to support the causal psi psychokinesis hypothesis. Well, Dr. Edward May, with a PhD in nuclear physicist, is the leading figure in anomalous cognition research and has authored more than 500 research and technical papers in this area. He was with the U.S. government's psi research program Stargate from late 75 to 1995 and was the research director from 85 to 95 at SRI International and SAIC. He's the president of the Laboratories for Fundamental Research in Palo Alto, California. So he really knows from what he speaks. Sonali Marwaha has a PhD in psychology, and she's a research associate with the Laboratories for Fundamental Research. Her interests include a synthesis of the cognitive sciences and anomalous cognition research, which can lead to theoretical developments in the field. And she lives in India. Boy, now, I don't know how I'm going to place all these books. I wanted to put the spines out in case you didn't catch me with the title, so we shall see. Maybe I'll just put some of these over here. Isn't this a cache of treasure? I tell you. Now, what this is, Enchanted Ground, The Spirit Room of Jonathan Koons, written by Sharon Hatfield. And for those who were not in the know, and I must admit that I was one, in Enchanted Ground, The Spirit Room of Jonathan Koons, Sharon Hatfield brings to life the true story of a 19th century farmer turned medium, Jonathan Koons, who was a dynamic spiritualist performer in antebellum United States. In the hills outside of Athens, Ohio, a place whose reputation as haunted persists to this day, Koons built a house where it was said the dead spoke to the living, and where ancient spirits communicated the wisdom of the ages. Curious visitors in homespun and in city attire traveled from as far as New Orleans to his remote Appalachian cabin, whose marvels would rival any of P.T. Barnum's attractions. Yet Koons' story is much more than showmanship and sleight of hand. His enterprise, not written about in full until now, embodied the excitement and optimism of citizens breaking free from societal norms. Reform-minded dreamers were drawn to Koons as his progressive brand of religion grew from the revivalism of previous decades to displace the gloomy Calvinism of the past. Hatfield also sifts through the gold and dross of Koon's character: the humble farmer eking out a living on a hillside homestead, the musician who fiddles his way into high society, the serious scholar and practitioner of religion who fends off charges of fraud. Above all, Koons is driven to share his passion through writing, even though some of that text he ascribes to the angels. Drawing from visitors' first-hand accounts and Koon's own books, essays, and letters, Enchanted Ground etches a vivid portrait of one of the 19th century spiritualism's most charismatic figures. There is a blurb on the back by Jeffrey Kripal, the author of Secret Body, Erotic and Esoteric Currents in the History of Religions, and he writes of the book that this is a marvelous book. It reads like a novel or a screenplay, but also functions as a prism that opens up into dozens of other important aspects of 19th century American religion: spiritualism, Johnny Appleseed, Swedenborgianism, atheism, social reform, women's rights, psychometry, and so on. Perhaps most significantly of all, the author's rare combination of humanistic sympathy, intellectual generosity, and a healthy doubt is a model of what this kind of history writing can be. I can't wait for this one. Lots more in this box. Let's see. The New Prometheans, Faith, Science, and the Supernatural Mind in the Victorian Fin de Siècle by Courtney Rea, if I pronounced it right, R-A-I-A. As we know in the back, but the Society for Psychical Research was established in 1982, not really, let's say 1882, to further the scientific study of consciousness. But it arose in the surf of a larger cultural need. Victorians were on the hunt for self-understanding. I think we are also on the same hunt. But in any case, mesmerists, spiritualists, and other romantic seekers roamed sunken landscapes of entrancement. And when psychology was finally ready to confront these altered states, psychical research was adopted as an experimental vanguard. Far from a rejected science, it was a necessary heterodoxy, probing mysteries as diverse as telepathy, hypnosis, and seance phenomena. Its investigators sought facts far afield of physical laws, evidence of a transcendent, irreducible mind. The New Prometheans traces the evolution of psychical research through the intertwining biographies of four men: chemist Sir William Crookes, depth psychologist Frederick Myers, ether physicist Sir Oliver Lodge, and anthropologist Andrew Lang. All past presidents of the Society, these men brought psychical research beyond academic circles and into the public square, making it part of a shared, far-reaching examination of science and society. By layering their papers, textbooks, and lectures with more intimate texts like diaries, letters, and literary compositions, Courtney Rea returns us to a critical juncture in the history of secularization, the last great gesture of reconciliation between science and sacred truths. Courtney Rea is a member of the humanities faculty at the Colburn School in Los Angeles. She's an award winner and has been recognized for excellence by Stanford University's Continuing Studies program. Jeffrey Kripal, who's been reading a lot of these books and commenting, says that this is easily the best book I've read on this important chapter of Western intellectual history. High praise. So, the New Prometheans. Well, I'm going to kill the pronunciation, but I think it's Medjugorje. Oh, I told you I'd kill it. But anyway, it's Medjugorje and the Supernatural: Science, Mysticism, and Extraordinary Religious Experience by Daniel Maria Klimek. Apparently, in June 1981, 6 young Croatians in the village of Medjugorje, in the former Yugoslavia, reported that the Virgin Mary had appeared to them. The Medjugorje visionaries say that Mary has returned every day since then, bringing them important messages from heaven to convey to the world. Throughout history, people have reported encountering extraordinary religious experiences, apparitions of the Virgin Mary, visions of Jesus Christ, weeping statues and icons, the stigmata, physical healings and miracles, and experiences of the afterlife, and interpreted them as supernatural in origin. Scholars have often tried to reinterpret such experiences, including those described by the great mystics like Francis of Assisi, Catherine of Siena, and Teresa of Avila, into natural or psychopathological categories, such as hysteria, hallucination, delusion, epileptic seizures, psychosis, the workings of the unconscious mind, or fraud. Are such reductionist explanations valid? Over the past 3 decades, the Medjugorje visionaries have been subjected to extensive medical, psychological, and scientific examination, even while undergoing their visionary experiences. Daniel Maria Klimek argues that the case of Medjugorje affords a rare opportunity to understand a deeper dimension of the extraordinary religious phenomena. Presenting and analyzing the scientific studies on the visionaries in juxtaposition with the major scholars and debates surrounding religious experience, Klimek concludes that a multidisciplinary approach grants a more holistic and deeper understanding of such extraordinary religious experiences. The author is a Third Order Franciscan friar and assistant professor in the theology department of the Franciscan University of Steubenville. And again, apologies for my lousy pronunciation. Oh, I'm very fond of this book. This is written by Jack Hunter, who serves as he's a past grantee, but he's also one of Parapsychology Foundation's research fellows. He's out with Greening the Paranormal, Exploring the Ecology of Extraordinary Experience. And it's a series of essays with contributions from Paul Devereaux, Cody Mayox, Nancy Wizers, Amba Seppi, Lance Foster, Jacob Glazier, Christian Simmons Moore, Mark Scholl, Victoria Duda, Maya Ward, Simon Wilson, David Luke, Brian Taylor, Sylvia Mutterly, Susan Marsh, Timothy Grieve Carlson, Alora Fangrad, Rick Fair, and Christopher Lawson. Jeffrey Cripple, again, says this book does everything one can hope for. The essayists do not flinch. They do not look away. They walk ahead right into the dark green forest of religion, mythology, and folklore. What they bring back could signal major shifts in our intellectual, social, political, and moral landscapes with respect to a natural world that is really a supernatural world, that is really us. And Dr. Serena Roney Dougal, a good friend of the PF, has this to say about the greening of the paranormal. I have always seen parapsychology as the spiritual aspect of the green movement. So I'm absolutely delighted that Jack has brought out this compilation of the green aspects of the paranormal, written from a very diverse array of perspectives. I hope that it makes a great impact on our society, which is in desperate need of changing its predominant world view. So let's all dig into this one. Oh, I'm also very proud of this book because it's written by Susan Mcwilliams. It's Modern Experiments. Susan, over the years, has worked closely with us at Parapsychology Foundation and other parapsychologists. And I formed a very close personal relationship with her. Let's see, this book, Modern Experiments, is the largest, most comprehensive exhibition of Mcwilliams' work to date. It presents key pieces from the artist's career with a focus on works created from 1998 forward, when the artist began working with video. Since then, she has investigated obscure and overlooked histories and cases of perceptual and paranormal phenomena. Using anecdote, reconstruction, forms of portraiture, and detailed editing, she has made work about mediumship, ectoplasm, X-ray vision, telepathy, table tipping, clairvoyance, and dermal optical perception. The work presented in this exhibition forms a unique and significant body of material exploring subjects that are on the periphery and beyond mainstream scientific and psychological study. Consisting of 28 of Susan Mcwilliams' works, Modern Experiments features 14 videos and video installations, including The Last Person, award winners Dermal Optics that was shown at the 2009 Venice Biennale, one on Kathleen, alongside other aspects of various practices, including photographic works, stereoscopes, neon and sculptural works, such as book spheres that she did in 2014. She's worked with prominent parapsychologists and psychical research institutions, including poltergeist investigator Dr. William G. Rowlett and the Dermal Optical Perception Laboratory of Madame Yvonne Duplessis in Paris. Her sustained engagement with the New York family of the Irish-born medium Eileen Garrett, that's where we come in, has resulted in the production of a substantial body of work. She has worked with the historical archives, including the T.G. Hamilton Spirit Photograph Collection at the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg, the Parapsychology Laboratory records in Duke University, Durham, and those of Parapsychology Foundation in New York, and the Rhine Research Center in Durham. She now teaches at the National College of Art and Design, and Susan has exhibited nationally and internationally with solo shows in New York, Dublin, London, Victoria, BC, Winnipeg, Manchester, Northampton, and Derby. Or is it Derby? I tell you, my pronunciations stink. And in any case, Modern Experiments, wonderful volume, and not in the least because my mother and I have our faces in it. So, Modern Experiments. Now, this is in French, and I'll probably murder that too, but I want people to understand that, of course, parapsychology and psychical phenomena appear cross-culturally all over the world, and hence the shelves of the Garrett Library have many foreign language, non-English speaking languages on our shelves, because we don't want to eliminate really good, valuable work lost just because we can't speak English. So this we have by Renaud Evrard, Enquête sur 150 ans de parapsychologie, la légende de l'esprit. So this is research of 150 years of parapsychology by Dr. Renaud Evrard, who I believe is serving this year as the president of the Parapsychological Association. So a lot of us academics can somehow work our way through the French speaking, and I really wish it would be translated. But for our French speaking readers, this is the one for you. Again, same reason. This is Italian, so now I'm going to murder Italian. This is Emilio Servadio, In Viaggio con Di Martino nella Lucania Rurale tra magia e medicina popolare. Boy, I don't know. But this is written by Bianca Maria Puma. She serves as the chief archivist for Emilio Servadio. Dr. Servadio was a longtime friend of Parapsychology Foundation and a very dear personal friend of Eileen Garrett, our founder, my grandmother. I remember him with great affection as a child, watching me grow up, and he holds the distinction of attending, I think, practically all of our Parapsychology Foundation international conferences. So in Italian, and again, not because there's a chapter in here about Eileen Garrett, but certainly he was a fantastic psychoanalyst, early parapsychologist involved in also the early drug work as well. So for the Italians in our constituency, Emilio Servadio. Now we're getting to the bottom. Okay, here we have C.G. Jung and the Dead, Visions, Active Imagination, and the Unconscious Terrain by Stephanie L. Stevens. Now, if you guys have been paying attention to Parapsychology Foundation's YouTube channel, which you really should, you know that we have a series called Book Nook. And in that, I interview various authors when I can get my hands on them. So there is a in-depth interview or at least an up-close and personal interview with Stephanie discussing this book, because we were very happy to give her the 2018 Francis B. Bolton Fellowship from the Foundation. This bold and fascinating book not only provides the most thorough examination to date of Jung's dreams and visions of the dead, but also argues provocatively that at least some of these experiences, rather than just symbolizing processes of the psyche, really were encounters with the dead. Beyond just presenting the evidence for this, Stevens demonstrates through her detailed analyses of specific dreams and visions, especially those contained in the Red Book, how Jung's encounters with the dead helped to shape his psychological concepts and therapeutic techniques. Needless to say, Stevens' argument also has far-reaching implications for understanding Jung's epistemological and ontological views of the psyche. So says a Professor Roderick Main of the Department of Psychosocial and Psychoanalytic Studies, University of Essex. So this is an in-depth look at Jung's encounters with the dead, moving beyond a symbolic understanding to consider these figures a literal presence in the psyche. Stephanie explores Jung's personal experiences, demonstrating his skill at visioning in all its forms, as well as detailing the nature of the dead. So, and as I said, check the interview out in Book Nook. Don't leave me, I only have 2 more. Seeing Myself, The New Science of Out-of-Body Experiences by Susan J. Blackmore. The book says it's essential reading for anyone seeking to understand their own mind and to find a spiritual path that is compatible with science. As an impressionable young student, and I do go that far back, so I remember her when she was an impressionable young student, as I was in the same boat, Susan Blackmore had an intense, dramatic, and life-changing experience, seeming to leave her body and travel the world. With no rational explanation for her out-of-body experience, OBE, she turned to astral projection and the paranormal, but soon despaired of finding answers. Decades later, a Swiss neurosurgeon accidentally discovered the spot in the brain that can induce OBEs, and everything changed. This crucial spot is part of the brain's self-system, and when disturbed, so is our experience of self. Blackmore leapt back into OBE research and at last began to unravel what had happened to her. Seeing Myself describes her long quest for answers through spirituality, religion, drugs, meditation, philosophy, and neuroscience. Anyone can have an OBE. Indeed, 15% of us have. Even more have experienced sleep paralysis, lucid dreaming, and the creepy sense of an invisible presence. That's why I sleep with a nightlight. At last, with the advent of brain stimulation, fMRI scanning, and virtual reality, all these phenomena are beginning to make sense. Long relegated to the very fringes of research, the new science of out-of-body experiences is now contributing to our understanding of consciousness and our very selves. So Susan is a psychologist known for her books exploring consciousness, memetics, evolution, and spirituality. She's a visiting professor at the University of Plymouth and a freelance writer, and she gives lectures all around the world, both at academic conferences and to the public. So, Seeing Myself, The New Science of Out-of-Body Experiences. And it looks like, guys, that I can be forgiven to say that I've saved the best for last, only because this one is just literally off the press a week ago. And it's Charles Richet, a Nobel Prize winner scientist's exploration of psychic phenomena by Carlos S. Alvarado, Ph.D. Now, Carlos and I and his wife Nancy Elzingroni, we have worked closely together for many, many years when they were with me up in New York, and they've never really severed that connection. So this is Carlos's first book, although he's a prolific writer, blogs, essays, you name it. But I want to tell you that Etzel Cardenia, PhD, the Thorson Professor of Psychology at Lund University, and co-editor of Parapsychology, a handbook for the 21st century and varieties of anomalous experience, writes that Charles Richet belongs to that most select group of individuals, including Marie Curie and William James, whose genius flowed over disciplinary borders and whose insatiable interests included psi phenomena. Richer finds a splendid chronicler in Carlos S. Alvarado, our foremost contemporary historian of parapsychology. And Renaud Evrard, who we just talked about his book in French, says that Carlos Alvarado is well qualified to write this book. Analyzing Charles Richer's contributions to psychical research is a difficult challenge because of epistemological biases that prevent us applying the usual scholarly approach. Alvarado has patiently collected every document relative to its topic and has presented them in a clear, didactic way and in context. This book was deeply needed. And I want to offer my congratulations to Carlos, and I know my late mother, Eileen J, the past president of Parapsychology Foundation, always used to chide him and encourage him to write his own book, and I'm hoping that this is the first of many. So having said that, guys, I think we have come, box is empty. So that doesn't mean that we won't be collecting more books for the shelves. But in the meantime, I'm going to sit here, and I have a little bit of libation because at this point I'm a little parched, so if you'll excuse me. I want to drink to all of you, whether you're celebrating a Merry Christmas, a Happy Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, Ramadan, Kwanzaa, whatever your background. I wish you, on behalf of Parapsychology Foundation and my daughter Anastasia Damalis, who works with me at the foundation and our board of trustees, I wish you all a wonderful holiday and the best and brightest for 2020. So jingle, jingle, I drink to you.